So today we're going to take it just a little bit further than what we've been doing. So there's this, Michelle Donnelly here has been looking for a used car. She just needs to drive to school and work, so she's not looking for something new. She just wants something that she can at least somewhat afford. She's found a Nova that costs a little less than $4,500. This is her first car. She obviously has no trade in that. There's nothing she can take in there and say, hey, I'll give you this car. And so let's, again, figure out that cash price real quick by basically adding a 6.25 sales tax. You notice how I keep changing that sales tax a little bit because it's different everywhere you go. So, and it says round the tax to the nearest cent. I'm not overly concerned about that because remember, we have our little shortcut for something like that, right? Because we want to add it on. So yeah, we could just go ahead and multiply by 0.0625. But we've got that little trick that'll just add it on for us, and that's by 1. Because do I actually ask you for the sales tax here? No, not really. I want to know what's that price going to be after we multiply that on, all right? And so please realize that depending on how you do that, it might change your answer a little bit, but it's not going to be huge. You're still going to have the general idea of what's going on. So you go ahead and you do that. Where's my calculator? There it is. And so what? 4495 times 1.0625. Hope that didn't go too fast. Hopefully it kind of kept up. I did all right. And so if we're going to look at that, we're probably going to say, and we'll find out it's going to behave today, and it is. So obviously if this is money, we're going to kind of look here and then look at the next number to decide what to do. And so we're talking about $4,775 and, whoops, helps if I write this number right over here, 0.94, right? And so that's what we're going to go put in that blank back over here. And so cash price is $4,775.94 when we get done rounding, correct? Now here's actually the part where people have made a mistake in the past. So basically she's saying, you know what, I mean, I've got to go to school, I got to go to work. I don't know too many people that are going to school and have a part-time job that have that kind of money sitting around. Remember, cash price is if you went in there and you had that money, that's what you could get it for. And so she said, well, better go to the bank, see what we can get here. The loan officer there said that she could take up to 48 months. It's completely up to her. But up to 48, she could do it in less. If she chooses any of their plans, it's going to be an add-on interest rate of 7.5%. So please realize the longer out she goes, the more money she's going to pay in the long run. Okay? So use the directions to complete the disclosure statement, which is on the back. We'll do that very last. We'll get all the answers, and then we'll just fill it in. All right, so she can take up to 48 months. Doesn't have to, but again, realize the further she goes, the worse it gets. And that's where people misread this in the past. She doesn't actually take all 48 months. All right, so let's see what happens. So that's what the bank says. So she's thinking about it, and she says, all right, well, let's figure out how much I actually have to finance. And before, we've been saying forget about tax and license and all that stuff, right? Well, today, realize that is something that she might want to finance, or she could just pay that on her own. It's completely up to her. So we got title and license here, and so we got to take that $4,775.94 and add on 68. I'm not going to go to the calculator for that one. I think we can probably handle that. In fact, I can probably just put it down here, right, and do it. That's easy enough. So it's a 9 and a 4, right? So what is that, a 13, 14, 8, right? Agree? So $4,843.94. Okay? Is how much she's basically going to ask the bank for. She's going to say, this is how much I need. Okay? It's used, and so she just needs it to get to work and to school, So, if you got a part-time job, that's a lot of money, right? Even today, that's still a lot of money. So what we're going to do then is multiply the amount financed, which is that number right there, of course. So amount financed is right there because that's how much she's asking the bank for, by the add-on interest rate of basically 0.075. So we're going to do that. So we're going to go 4843.94 times 0.075. Okay. Now if I do that, notice here it wants me to round to the nearest cent once we do that. So we better follow the directions. If that's what they want us to do, then that's probably how we should approach this problem. So we'll go ahead and we'll say, all right, we've got, I'm going to have to write it over here, 4843.94 times 0.075. Let's figure out what we've got here. Some of you already have that. Let's see if we get the same number. I hope so. 0843.94 times 0.075. Okay. So if we round that, we're talking about 363.30, right? If we round that, because you would be looking at this 9, and that 5 would tell you to round that up, so that kind of becomes like a 10, then the 1 kind of throws over there, makes that a 3, okay? And so it would be 0.30, right? So that's how much it is for, well, let's go here and go back. So you'd agree it was what, 360, what was it again, what was the number? I didn't write it down. 363.30, that's what I thought. It didn't sound right when I was saying it. So now wait a minute. It says I have to take that answer and multiply it by 2.5? What's the 2.5? Are they just making up that number? It's 30 months. Do you agree that 30 months is basically 2.5 years? Because 2 years is 24 months, right? And then it's another 6 months, so it's 2.5, right? That makes sense. So did she use all 48 months? No, she says, you know what? I think I can handle this payment. She must have figured it out and said, I think I can handle it, only going 30 months. So you got to take that number times 2.5. I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about rounding here, but so times 2.5. So I'm going to write that one down this time. Now, what is that? What's that number? 908.25. What does that kind of stand for? What is that? Okay, that's what I want you to start learning from this. Well, they call it the finance charge. That's great. You can tell me that, but what does that mean? Truly. Anybody tell me what that means? Is that how much she has to pay for the car? $908.25? Nope, that's a very high monthly payment. Yep, that's not what it is. Yeah, she'd have it paid off really quick, right, if it was $900. So that's good. You said, wait a minute, that's what I think it is, but that's not right. So that's good. What that is basically what the bank's going to get out of this deal. All right? The bank's saying, sure, we'll give you that $4,800, but you're also going to have to pay on top of that a $908 charge that basically comes to us. Do you pay that right away? No, you pay that over time, slowly, in those monthly payments. But in the end, that's how much the bank's going to kind of get out of this deal. So are they feeling okay about this deal? Probably. They're like, sure, why not? We're going to get $900 out of this. We'll do that for you. So that's what finance charge actually means. 908.25, right? So I better write down this other number over here. 4,843.94. So that's how much the bank's giving me, right? The 4,843.94. And in the end, I'm going to give the bank that much back, and I'm also going to give them 908.25 back. So I'm going to actually be giving them quite a bit of money. And that's what we're talking about, total of payments. You take the finance charge, which was 908.25, right? That's what we just figured out. That's how much the bank's going to get out of this deal. And the amount financed, basically how much the bank's going to give me. And in all, that's how much I'm going to pay. Over the span of this loan, that's how much money I have to pay. And I would have to agree to that. Okay, that's what that disclosure statement is. I have to basically sign to agree to do that. And obviously, if I fail to do that, well, that bank just got a car. For a lot less than needed, they'll turn around and sell it, and they'll still get their money. And you will be without a car and the money that you already paid. All right, so keep that in mind. So we have to obviously add those two together. Well, that's not even all that hard either. We can just do that right here, right? So that's what, a 9 right there. That's an 11. That's another 11, but it turns into a 12, right? Well, that's a nice one. That's only a 5. There's a 17 you found it right there. So $5,752.19. Do you agree with that number? All right. So that's how much in total. I probably should have wrote that over here, but that's how much in total that, what's her name, Michelle? Is that what it was? Yeah, Michelle is going to have to pay. So are there any questions at any of the calculations we've done so far? I think the only thing really different is that we actually did consider title and license this time. Really from what we've been doing. Now this is definitely a new one because we've only been talking kind of basically about add-on interest rates so far. Well, a lot of times they're going to talk about the annual percentage rate, or APR. You might hear that as an abbreviation for this. Again, APR is, you kind of can tell where they get that from, right? APR. And when you have an add-on interest rate, this is kind of how you have to calculate it. This is a nice little formula, and if I remember from last year, if you ever need to use that formula, I'll give it to you. Okay, and I think I even give you this stuff here. All right, but I'll tell you, calculate the annual percentage rate, and basically you have to substitute in the values. Okay, and so it says right here on top, notice there's a big division bar right there, right? And there's a 2. And then a parenthesis and an M. Okay, so number of payments in a year is what well, she's making monthly payments, right? So how many payments is she going to make in a year? If she's making monthly payments, how many in just 1 year? 12, right? Now, if it was bi-weekly, that would be 26, okay? Not 24, 26. Remember that one we had over on the table here the other day? And F, the finance charge, 908.25, right? You see how really this is set up fairly well. You found all these answers already. You just have to substitute them in. So P is the amount financed, which I believe is at 4843.94, right? And what do we got here on the bottom is an N plus 1, which is total number of payments, which is what N is, right? And I have to add 1 to that. Well, how many payments was she going to make again? Not in just a year. Overall, how many is she making? She was going to make 30, right? She decided 2.5 years. But what do we have to do to that 30? We have to add 1, so 31. Okay? Give me a second. I'm going to write the over here. And I'm thinking if your calculator shows you what you're typing, you can just go ahead and type this pretty much straight in. But you have to be a little careful if you want to try that. And so what we're going to work on now is kind of some calculator skills. Because normally, or at least last year, I saw a lot of people that had the formula written out perfect and then got it wrong. Okay? So if you have a calculator, you can always do it this way. You can just, because if you remember from other math, that division bar is actually a grouping symbol, which says do top and bottom separate. And you can do that. You can just go ahead and figure out what is that number and just write it over here. And then figure out what is this number. And guess what? Write it over there and then take those 2 numbers and divide. That might be the safest, just because I don't know how comfortable you are with your calculator. Because if I actually want to type this straight in on mine, I have to put a big old parenthesis around all of that and a big old parenthesis around all of that. So that's going to be a lot of parentheses on my calculator, right? And if you miss just one, it's going to give you an error, then you're going to get frustrated, okay? So maybe just do top and bottom separate, okay? So what do we got there? 2 times 2. I got to go to my calculator first. Well, we don't really need this anymore, right? So let's get rid of that. So we're going to do 2 times 12 times 908. Do you agree that means the same thing as what we had? I don't really need the parentheses, right? It's just times. So that would be fine. Is it okay if you put the parentheses? Sure. All right. So let's just go ahead. Boom. There's that number. You might want to write that down somewhere. So what do we got there? 21,798. I'm not going to necessarily write it down because I'm going to have it right on my screen. But you might not. If you have those smaller calculators, you might want to write that down so you don't forget the number. Okay. And so now our bottom is 4843.94 times 31. And just trust me on that plus 1 for right now. I could explain where that comes from, but I don't think you necessarily want to hear that. So just trust me on that. Whoa, that's a big number. Okay, so you're going to want to write that down somewhere. Or if you're really good with your calculator, you can save yourself from writing down that number. If you know how to bring that answer back up, that saves so much time, especially when the number's that big. All right, let's face it, you forget one of these numbers in here, and then you go and type it in, and oh, it's going to be trouble, right? You're not even going to get the right answer. Okay, so now wait a minute. What did we do here? What did I say? Basically, we just figured out top and bottom separate, right? So now what do I have to do with those 2 numbers? I have to divide. And it's always top divided by bottom, right? Because that's how you would read it. It's this stuff on top divided by that stuff on the bottom. And so my top number is which of those numbers? Well, it's really actually the one on top. It actually runs out that way. So it's 21,798. Now, those of you, even with those smaller calculators, can do this little trick. On there somewhere will be this one button that says ANS. Down here it's on the negative. I think it's even on the negative on those other ones, isn't it? Or is it not on the negative? Or is it on the negative? Oh, awesome. On the 30X2S's or whatever those are. What you can do is, obviously it's that other color. For you, is yours blue or what color is yours? Yours is blue? Okay, so same as mine. So you hit the second, and then you hit that button down there. And what it does is it takes whatever you have, please don't freak out, okay. Whatever you have here, and it just puts it right there for you. So you don't have to write it down, okay, which is pretty slick, especially when the number's that big. Again, let's say you're typing along, you're going fast, and you forget the 1 when you type it in. Obviously, that's a huge problem, all right? And so here, you can't possibly type it in wrong, right? Okay. So are you expecting a big number here, small number? I mean, what are you expecting? If it's an annual percentage rate, I mean, have you heard of like a 45% annual percentage rate on a loan? No, you're expecting this to be, you know, an okay number. Come on, there we go. So what are we looking at for an APR? Again, that's annual percentage rate. Again, what do you got to do? You got to take this decimal in, move it over, okay? Or you could just take it times 100, right? That would do it for you. Did I type it in right, or do I have something wrong? I'm good? Oh, okay. Because that made sense to me, 14.5. I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. That's at least something that's possible. So I'm guessing, in today's sense, that Michelle didn't have very good credit, right? If it's 14.5. Because that's what banks do. If you want the loan, they're going to charge you more interest because they want to make sure they get their money, right? And if you have good credit, well, maybe it'd be a lot less. And credit unions are a really good place to go if you can do it. So what do we got there? 14.5. I got to go back to our notes now, huh? So what was our APR? I don't even have a place to write it. We'll write it down here. Does it say word around here? We'll just go 14.5, huh? 14.5. Okay. So any questions on it? Now that's kind of a new one, though, right? That's probably the only thing that's new other than title and license today. But let's say that's significant, right? That formula. But again, I'll give you that, and I'll give you these down here, what they stand for, all right? And then you just have to plug them in. Now, some people are always worried, well, what if I get some of those other answers wrong? Well, you're in luck, because I actually look through and say, okay, did they put the right numbers in there? Obviously, if you got them wrong earlier, this isn't going to be right, is it? So I'm going to base it on your numbers. Did they do this right based on their numbers? Okay. Obviously, if you get something out here that's like 145%, you should realize your numbers might not have been right. Okay. Or if you get 1%, yeah, that's really stretching it. Okay. You should be looking something 4 to 20, something in that range. Even 20 is a little high. Credit cards maybe not, but for a car loan it probably is. Okay. So any questions on any of those? All right. So now all you really have to do is take all the answers. All you got to do is find them and put them in. Whoop, we got to do this yet. I got ahead of myself. All right. So divide the total of payments. Wait a minute. What number was our total of payments? Oh, there. 5,000. I got to write it down again. 5,752. So this is another thing that's going to be new today. So 5,752.19, right? That's our total of payments. All right. So I'm going to write that down. 5,752.19. And, well, that's after all the payments are done, that's how much I should pay, correct? Or she should pay, Michelle, right? By the number of payments, 30. So we have to divide. What are the chances that this comes out to a really, really perfect number? Does that sometimes happen? Yes. The chances, probably not too good, right? So let's go ahead and figure out, well, what are we dealing with here? And I got it written down there. Good. Let's get rid of all this stuff. Everybody's got this, right? All right, get that out of there. So 5,752.19 divided by 30, because that's how many payments she's going to make, right? Boom. Ugh, that's a horrible decimal. Can you actually pay that amount every month? Not really. What, are you going to start splitting up pennies or something? How are you going to do that? So at this point, this is another place where I'm going to kind of leave it up to you. Here's what they will normally do. Okay, they just the company decides we either round up or we round down. That's just flat out they decide. Okay, and basically they're still going to get all their money though. It's just your last payment's going to be a little different. Is how they're going to do it. Okay, so let's decide as a company, do we want to always round these up or do we always want to round them down? I really don't care. Round them up all the time. Okay, so what that means is you agree we have a 3 here. If we're, as a company, going to decide, do we really care what that number is? No, if there is a number over there where that 9 is, we're going to flat out turn that 3 into a 4. We're rounding up every time. Okay, we're breaking the rules of math. Okay, we're going to round up because our company has decided to do that. So the company then is saying that we are going to make a payment of 191.74. Are you in agreement with that? But wait a minute. If I make 30 payments of that amount, well, let's find out. What do we have? Times 30. We've paid that much money. Is that how much money we're supposed to pay? We've paid 1 penny too much. Now, if the bank, if you want to, you can do that. But let's face it, if the loan's bigger, that could be a much bigger difference than 1 cent, correct? And so what they do is they say, okay, we know that you're supposed to make 30 payments total. Okay, so they say, why don't you give me 191.74 for 29 of the payments? Okay, and then you agree that they would get that much. Okay, and they're saying, okay, obviously if I'm a cent over, what you're going to do is you're going to make 1 payment, so you're going to add on just 1 payment of 191.7. You agree it comes out to the correct number now. That's how they do it, okay? Now, obviously, this one was easy because it was 1 cent. Now, let me show you how I would do that otherwise. So what is it? 191.74 we have decided as a company. That's a horrible name, but that's fine. So here's how I would do it. Let's go back to here. And to this page. So in a second, I'm going to let you go and fill in these other ones, because you have all these answers. You just have to put them in. Do you see here that they're going to ask for 29 payments of some amount and 1 payment of another, correct? You just told me that we decided this was going to be 191.74 because you told me we're always rounding up, right? It's on the back for those of you that can't see it. Now here's kind of what I do when I do it. We know total of payments was that number, correct? And what was 29 times that one? What was that number again? I didn't write that one down. 29 times that was 5560.46. Sorry, I left the page there. So now you don't normally write this in, but if I made 20 payments of that, I'm just going to write the answer in there just so you can see it. Okay, you don't have to really write it there. Do you agree I will have paid? That's what we got on our calculator, right? That we would have paid that much. Does anybody have maybe an easier way of figuring out that last payment than what I did? Obviously, I figured it out in my head. But how would you figure it out? What's the last payment got to be? Well, how much is the bank expecting to get in the end? All their money. And where's that number on here? Where's all their money? Where's that number? Yeah, the $5,752.19, right? Do you agree after 29 payments, I will have paid $5,560.46? So how could you figure out what that last payment has to be? They want all of that. Well, you could, but that's easy because this was an easy one because we were only a cent off based on how I showed you. Okay, I knew how to do it. But let's say you got stuck here. Well, do you agree that 5,752 is how much they should get paid? And then this is how much has already been paid. How do you figure out how much is left over? How would you do that? Subtract. Exactly. That's all you got to do. Take 5,752.19, subtract this, and it's going to tell you what's put in that other blank. Because you've already paid the 5,560, so all you got to do is subtract. And obviously you already know this answer because I showed you, but that's because I did it in my head. But that's how you would figure it out if you had to do that. If you subtract those two numbers, I guarantee that's what you're going to get. And if you wanted to check, you could take that 29 times the 191.74 and add the 191.73, that last payment, and they would get the exact amount. They would get $5,752.19. Okay? So if you've put in amount financed, finance charge, and an APR over there, you got that all figured out? Okay. And a lot of this other stuff is basically saying that if you don't make your payments, they can take your car. I mean, if you really want me to boil it down for you. So that's why this here, the goods or properties being purchased, that's kind of part of your collateral, basically. Because remember, who really gets the title and license? The bank gets it until they've gotten $5,752.19, and then they give you it. Okay. And they're also saying here that this other bottom check is saying anything I've already paid, well, I'm forfeiting that as well if I stop my payments. And let's face it, that's how it works. I mean, you lose your car, and they get the payments as well. Okay. So any questions on that? All right. Well, let's get started on the next one. We're definitely not going to get it done, but there's something a little different. So let's just recap what was different here. We split up the payments so that the total came out right? And then the only other thing I think here was, whoops, the annual percentage rate and title and license. Those were the differences here. Yeah. No. 908. 25, I think. Yep. Right there, the one in green. Because we had to take the 363 times 2.5. Because an add-on interest rate is like for a year, is how they figure that. So, yep. So then we figured out the annual percentage rate. All right. This particular, what's it, Bill? Is that what it got cut off there? Just graduated from high school. It's a 6-hour drive. Ooh. He is found a Blazer 4x4 they would like to buy and drive back and forth. Probably not a good idea with gas prices right now to be getting a Blazer, but that's right. And you probably want this sheet of paper, I would guess. He and his family agreed to a price, $6,500? He has no trade-in. All right, well, so this is also his first vehicle. So, let's see what we can do. Yeah, we're not going to get this one done. It's okay. But what's going to happen here pretty soon is you're going to get an assignment that kind of goes over all the ones that we've done in class, and you get to use these on there. You get to look over them. Okay, how did we do it? What did we do? Where'd that number come from? That kind of thing. We'll go for another 5 minutes here, and we'll be good. Oh, no trading, huh? Well, we got a new cash price. Well, we got to add on that 5% sales tax. Go. Do it. Should be able to know how to do that in your sleep by now. We've done it so many times. All right, so cash, again, you should be able to start doing this almost without even thinking. I'm not really asking you for sales tax. I'm asking you to add it on. And so that makes this a little bit easier. And so I just did it on the calculator. And hopefully you got the same number. Did you? So what was it, 6,000? I don't have enough room in that little blank. So I'm going to write it down here. And there's no cents, right? That came out pretty nice. That's because there's no 5.5 or anything. It was just a nice 5%. That was going to work out nice. So $6,825. And then the only other thing we're going to be able to get done today is, well, we're going to talk here about this real quick. His dad is part of a credit union, and that loan officer has offered him something else, a interest rate of 1%, but it's only on the unpaid balance. That's how a lot of them actually are right now. It's only 1% on the unpaid balance. He could get credit life insurance for free, but he'd have to pay for credit disability insurance if he wanted. Basically, if he became disabled, couldn't work, and couldn't make the car payments, that would take care of that. Okay. We kind of have different words for that now. So let's see what we can do. First thing we got to do is this, and then we'll be done for today. So the amount financed, so is the cash price, which we just got was what, 6825. 0.00, right? That was the cash price. And we're going to add on $75 for license and title, because he's got it. This is how much he's asking that credit union for. And he decided not to buy the disability insurance. All right. So that's all we got. So he's not adding that in. So that's what, a 10 there, right? 9, oh, another 10, a 9, and a 6. 6,900. So that's how much he's asking the credit union for. And tomorrow we're going to find out, well, whenever you pay on the unpaid balance, it's called an amortization that you can look at, and that just gives you nice information. Okay? Because that, and I'm never going to make you do that arithmetic by hand because it is kind of, well, a little bit more complicated than we need in here. Let's put it down.